Welcome to Art Obsession Studio. And I'm going to start right away with a tip because I thought I would share this. Working with a glass or possibly an acrylic, if you have it, palette surface, and this is glass, you can use cellophane, the shrink wrap, the same stuff you'd wrap a sandwich in, to put over top of your paints. And if you push down gently just around them and even touch them lightly on the surface, you're going to save these paints. They're going to last a lot longer. So when you grab this, you can just take this and pull it off in one shot. Now some of the paint will come away, but some of it is going to stay behind, and you're going to save a lot of paint this way without having to scrape it off and throw it out. So that's just my first tip of today as we get started working with some of these colors and what I would say would be more of an advanced color theory, because we're going to go a little bit beyond. We'll just touch again on the what those base colors are, those basic colors, and then we're going to go into some details about how some of these are made up and so on. So let's get started. But I've taken a bunch of colors and I've put them on my palette that are those primary colors, those ones I showed you that I saved off my glass palette, and I put them on a smaller palette. So I have those those first are primary colors, as we call them, but there's color theory. There is so much, like you can get into every little detail of how the color is created. And I think this would probably turn into a 3-hour video if we were to do that. So I'm going to try and keep it as basic as possible. So forgive me if I miss something or whatever, but I'm going to just work with some of these basic colors, and I'm going to put them on here and just so that you can carefully, or so that you can see what's going on with some of these basic colors. So there's lots of variations, and you're going to get a lot of different opinions about how you can create your own colors, and there's lots of little tricks, especially here on YouTube. You're going to hear people saying, why would you make your own green or why would you buy your own green when you can make it, and why would you buy or use black when you can make your own black? And sometimes there's so many steps that you have to go through. I have done paintings where I've just used the 3 primary colors and some tones. And while they worked out good, there's a lot of steps you have to take. Why would you bother yourself to do that? There are colors like, and here's a good example. I have Naples yellow as an example. It's a wonderful color. There is no really such thing as Naples yellow, except that you're mixing it with white and yellow ochre, and you're creating Naples yellow. Why would I buy it? Well, I bought it for nostalgic purposes, and also because sometimes I don't want to be bothered blending up. It's exactly the tone that I'm looking for the highlight. I can take it right off of my palette and put it on. But for fun, what we're going to do now is we're going to actually take a look at some of these fundamental colors, and I'll put them on here so that you can see them. So we're going to pull some cadmium yellow down, and this is a good experiment. You should do this with your paints when you're done painting, anyways. And then what I do is I just take some like this white, it's titanium white, and I just run it into the bottom a little bit and brush it out, just so we can bring that to a lighter hue, so that we can work with that and see where we end up with that. I keep a little paper towel handy, or a rag or whatever, so I can clean my brush off. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull some blue down, and I'm going to pull that down right in here beside it. And again, I'm going to grab some of this white, which is a little bit on the dirty side actually, but at least it'll give you a bit of an idea of where we're going with that. So let's pull in another primary color. And in this case, I'm going to use a vermilion. I could use a cadmium red. Vermilion's actually made up of some cadmium, and it's going to do the job for us and in doing what we want it to do. And again, the same thing, a little bit of this white to pull this down. doing this type of thing is it's a good exercise for you because you get to know your colors and you're going to get to understand them a lot better when you do this. So always be experimenting. Then I'm going to take some black. I'm going to put the black on this side actually. I'll pull that into there. I've got some green, which I'm going to put in over here by the red, just so I can show you a few things. This is some burnt umber. Pull that in. And I'm going to put more blue in beside the umber, like that. Okay. So now what we're going to do with these is we'll do a little bit of blending. I'll just wipe this brush off. It's better if the brush isn't contaminated, like this one is a little bit contaminated, but I'm going to stick with the same brush. So what we want to do is we're going to blend these, bring them into kind of a common center, and you can see that there's a green developing between the yellow and the blue. There we go. Right? Right, there we are. There it is. And if we wanted to lighten it up, we could simply add a little more of a yellow and white blend, right like this, and you can see how that lightens up. The next thing to do is to take this black, which I put in. I'm going to put more black in just so we know that we've got a good amount of it. And then what I want to show you is I'm going to pull some yellow in over top of that black. A little bit more. And you can see that this is kind of giving me a bit of a green. So I'm getting like a green, an olive drab, like a deep forest dark green. So with mixing yellow and black, I can bring that out. And there's a reason for that. We know that yellow and blue makes a green, and now we're going yellow to black and we're still making green. And that's because, look over here, burnt umber, which is a dark brown, the blue, which is a French ultramarine, blend those together, and we basically have created black. Same trick in reverse. Take, and you'll notice it's like, hey, wait, I see some brown tones and some blue tones. Exactly. You see, working from the brown over into the blue, you can see there's these different tones. So when you get black, there are different types of black. And what they're made out of and what ingredient is greater in the black and lesser in the black will determine what sort of tonality it's going to have. Now we take the white, if we want to really make that more obvious to our eye, and you can see from the brown over to the greenish or the blue, and it'd be the green in the middle and there's blue. So we have a blue, a green, and a brown. And that is what's come out of mixing those two things together. It's almost a greenish color there right in the center, because that's what we're doing, is we're starting to break down that black, just like we did over here, where we created green from bringing the yellow into the black. And what we're doing is we're picking up the blue and we're interacting with that blue that's already present in the black. That's black out of the tube, like ivory black, for instance. So each one has a slightly different hue in it. And that's why I would also encourage you to get yourself a little book like this. Now this book has canvas sheets in it. And you can see what I've done here is sometimes I plan out a painting with these canvas sheets, and then I'll talk about the colors. And it's kind of an experiment of color, and I get to play with different things. And then make notes for yourself. So up here I have Mars black, and I show the tonality that's come out of that. Ivory black, you can see the tonality that's coming out of that somewhat. This one over here, this lamp black, quite a bit of a blue hue coming out of that. Mars has given me more of a brownish hue. So obviously with our Mars black, we know that sort of that dark umber kind of quality is a little more predominant. So, you know, depending if we want the forest scene or we're working on clouds, We might seek out more of a bluish undertone in our ivory and lamp blacks, and then maybe in something like Mars Black, which appears to be a little more on the brownish tone. That might actually be a good go-to for making dark forest colors. So having a little cheat sheet like this on canvas is a really good way to go. So you can play with some of these colors and understand them. Next, I've done the same worksheet for blue, because not all blues are created equal, and some have more green undertones in them. So when you look in the Prussian blues, you have almost a turquoisey thing. The cerulean blue, you're looking at a greeny hue, very tropical looking. Okay, I love it for that Caribbean look or feel. You know, cobalt blue is just this magnificent, brilliant blue. It's just, phthalo blue is also very brilliant. And then French ultramarine, look at the difference now between the French ultramarine. It's more of a dull blue, not as much of the periwinkle values that you'd see in cobalt blue. So again, when you have that twilight sky in some paintings, I would go instantly over to cobalt blue just because of that rich atmospheric feel that it has, whereas this has almost more of a stormy feel on the French ultramarine. So each one has its own purpose. And the Prussian, you know, if I want more greeny tones coming through, then I would do that. I don't have anything here with Viridian, but I'm going to show you that anyway, because again, it's one of those funky greens, but I do think I might have some here. Yes, there I go. So in Viridian, we can see when we blend it out with white, we get this kind of almost a phosphorescent kind of quality to it, right? Oxide of chrome, so chromium oxide green, and how that behaves with yellow and white. And then sap green. Look at how rich the sap green turns out in comparison to these other ones. And again, this and green earth. And so this is one of the reasons why it's okay to buy paint in a tube like green earth or sap green and go, why shouldn't I just create my own green? Well, why would you when you have this type of range of variety to pick from? It just puts more power on your paintbrush to be more versatile. But you should know what each of them does and how they behave with other colors. So a little workbook like this would go a long ways to helping you out in your understanding of the color theory that we're working on here. So, and here we are now again. The one we didn't mess around with too much was this green, and I think what I have here is green earth. And what I want to do is I'm going to take and oh, I grabbed the red. I already have my red in place. And what you'll find is when we bring the red and the green and a little bit of the blue, and remember the green is a created color. It's created from the blue and the yellow. So I'm just kind of mixing everything together. A little more of the blue, a little more of the red, a little more of the yellow. And if you work that enough, what you're going to end up with is a brown. You're going to bring yourself all the way across to a muddy brown. And there you have it. So all the primaries together, pretty much a brown. And I need my trusty little cloth, so we're going to wipe that clean. Now another one we didn't talk about, and it's one of my favorites, is this red and this blue, and bringing those two together and getting our purple. And sometimes if you're dealing with, this is a hue, by the way, it's an adjustment to cadmium red, this vermilion. Vermilion hue is made with some cadmium red, but I mean, there you have it. And again, we can show it off by dragging white in through there and see that we actually do have that purple or that mauve kind of color going on. So understanding all of these colors and how they blend together is really going to help you out a lot. You can drag some whites down through the bottom end of this and lighten everything up. Create this kind of wispy effect at the very tail end of all of this stuff. I still want people to know we use some red in there. You almost end up with a painting. But this is what we do to understand the colors that we're mixing. So we know that we can create black, but we can also purchase black in the tube, and it can have its own tonalities, so we can instantly go to it. I need a bluish, grayish, stormy sky, so I want a black which emphasizes that bluey undertone, like an ivory black. And I believe Mars black is more on the brownish undertone side, like when we mixed the blue and the brown together, a little richer on the browns. So if I need a forest kind of color and I want to take my yellows and mix it in with there, I can create this green that I might be able to use. There you go. Like an olive drab kind of green. Very foresty, dark forest, mossy, any of those types of applications. So lots of little tricks, but you don't have to be so tricky. You can just use these colors straight out of the tube. There's so many that are pre-mixed. And they will tell you, if you look at the backs of some of these, there are these codes like this. I don't have my glasses, but you know, there'll be PR, whatever the heck, like this one's PB, PBK6 and stuff. And so you'll get to know the different pigments that go into the tube to make the colors that you're using. And on the lower end of everything here, it's just dirty white. We'll just use it up just for fun, just to see how we brighten the tones with white right across the spectrum, basically almost creating a rainbow because of all these different colors, right? So I hope that helps you to, excuse me, I hope that helps you to understand a little bit more about color theory and how we would apply that into a painting. We can go ahead, know which way colors are going, and we can go ahead and experiment with that. There are times when there is no green I've found in the tube that will ever be as good as black and yellow. There is no green that I know of that will have the opacity, the opaqueness quite like this. And I can make such dark and rich greens out of black and yellow. Little bits of different tonality there between using the Naples yellow and the pure cadmium. Look at that green. I don't know if you can really appreciate that with the video or not. Some of this, to darken my darker values just by bringing in the black and working the wet over the wet, then suddenly making these trees becomes a lot easier. All right, so that doesn't really conclude art theory because, again, like I say, if a person really wanted to do art theory, it would be a series of classes, and you would talk about each of the elements and compounds and light and how it reacts with these things and how oxides are derived from metals to make white, for instance. But without going into all of that, I hope that I've given you some sense of what you can do with a color that's available in the tubes. And if you do want to be creative, that you can make some of your own. and how you can utilize some of the hidden properties of certain tubes of paint and pigment, like the pigment that's available in blacks, and how you can make use of that where it's really difficult to find a tube of green, for instance, right, that will produce that deep, deep, heavy green that you need that's very opaque. So without having to add black to an existing green, which is not necessarily the way to go. So little tricks like that are very valuable for an artist to know, as well as creating either black itself or even the impression of black using the browns and the blues. So those are probably the biggest takeaways from understanding colors and pigments. So you have to work with these things on a sheet, on a palette, even when you're done a painting. Strongly encourage you to play with your paints and see what you're creating, and make notes too if you do have that workbook that I showed you. So please subscribe to this channel. If you like this channel, support it with a thumbs up, and a subscription will help this channel to reach more people. So thank you very much for watching this video.